Hello and welcome to today's video. Does drafting level the equipment playing field? It's something that isn't really testable as easily as everything else. Like at Zwift Insider, a lot of other people, me included, have been able to test frames, wheels on different courses and to choose which is actually the best bike for that course. But one of the missing bits of information is how much difference does actually make in the draft. What penalty am I paying by using a climbing bike on the flat in a pack? Now, I've got an account that I very rarely use, so I actually don't have access to all the equipment. What I'll be doing is using the Bridgestones combined with the DT Swiss non-disc disc wheels, and the bike that I'll be using to gauge how much penalty you are paying in a group with the draft will be the felt, because I've kind of bought the Venge and they're both exactly the same specs from Zwift Insider's testing. And then also, of course, the discs, the DT Swiss discs. So that will be the baseline. So the first thing I did was join Coco, pretty fortuitous. I was actually heading down a hill, so that was a pretty good indicator about the aerodynamics of the bike without even pedaling at the moment. Now, this is not going to be a quick video. I do have to include all the footage, so bear that in mind. It is a long video just so I can demonstrate as much as possible within a reasonable time frame for a video the drafting effects between an aero bike and a climbing bike. As you can see here, the climbing bike is well behind the aero bike. The aero bike's making my way past Coco. Climbing bike, I'm just heading towards Coco now, and look at the draft. They're both getting an enormous amount of draft. That's expected. There's nothing unusual there. So everything here pretty much is if you click on this video, this is what you expect. This is the aero bike is making their way through the group easily, or more easily than the climbing bike. What's the point of making this video? You're probably asking. Well, stick around, because there is actually some nuances that I thought there are some nuances that actually make the decision a lot harder than you think, or a lot easier depending on your viewpoint. As people who follow my channel and my live stream know, I grab the disc wheel and the most aero bike regardless of the course, even if it goes up the Alpe, because I figure I'm not racing for the climbs. A few seconds is not going to make a difference to me. Okay, now interestingly, they've converged. So is it the new pack dynamics doing this? Possibly. But as you can see, Coco's lined out a long way, so there's no reason why my aero bike couldn't have just kept on heading up the pack. What I've probably done is I've eased off the power just to make sure I'm not in the watt wasting window, and they've both joined together. So now this is, as I said, it's not cut and dried. There's a lot of nuances to this. Now the aero bike's behind the climbing bike, and remember, I'm using the same power. I've connected the trainer to both accounts. And it's not what you expect, is it? This is not what you would have bet going into this video. So what I need to do is I need to find out why. Maybe there's some sort of circumstance. Maybe it's just ebb and flow. If I do 1,000 rides, the average will be obviously for the aero bike in theory. So I'm just going to go up this climb and head into Fuego. But then what I'll do is I'm going to late start to make sure that there's no issues with pen locations. The Tour de Zwift. And I'd love to press a coffee button just to piss off a lot of viewers, but the late join is going to piss off people enough. And also the fact that I'm riding two accounts with the same group, basically giving myself a draft. But this is why I changed the FTP to the same as the FTP on my main account. Weight, height, everything's the same, obviously. For those in the comments, just type those comments anyway that I messed up. Alright, so it's really nothing. Like, literally, you'd be looking at this, and if you didn't know that I had different bikes, then you'd be like, so what? What are you making video for? They're just showing now that everything's the same. Okay, so let's keep an eye on the draft to see if there's anything that gives us an indication. So 127, they're both the same. I'm backing off the power. So when you back off the power, your source will show that you're gaining less watts in the draft, because what it's showing is if you're riding by yourself and you're trying to do this speed, how many more watts do you need to do to stay at that speed? So when you back off the power, like as you'll see now, I'm backing off the power, it shows lower draft. The big way to see this is when you're sprinting and you're going through a group a lot faster, then the draft meter will go a lot higher, because obviously to do another 5 kilometers an hour, you need to be doing a lot more watts. So what I'm going to do now is go to stage 1 of the Tour de Zwift, late join, so that I don't have to worry about being in the wrong different positions on the pen, and put me in the same pack. And see what happens when I just concentrate on one bike. My theory going to this is that the lightweight bike's going to get dropped when I'm riding using the AERO bike to look at, and when I'm looking at the AERO bike, the lightweight bike, the AERO bike's going to stay in the group easily. There's not going to be any issue because it's a faster bike on the flat. The other reason why I late join on this is because there's a climb at the beginning, and no one wants to do a climb just for a video. So we're going down a descent, which is perfect. The only thing about the Tour de Zwift is I can't use different jerseys, so you just have to remember on the left-hand side, I'll definitely put it on the screen anyway when I edit this. Left-hand side is the climbing bike, right-hand side is the AERO bike. Now, interestingly, so this is maybe a good time to look at the draft meter a lot more carefully than I am, if you want to pore over the details of why things happen in this video that you're not really expecting, or what I didn't expect. Okay, so I've made the descent, and the climbing bike's just behind the AERO bike, which is exactly what I'd expect, because I was trying to do the minimum amount of effort just back there on that section with the climbing bike, with the AERO bike, so that I wasn't in the watt wasting window. So what I do now is I'm going to ride just looking at the AERO bike, dangling at the back to do the least amount of watts so I don't waste watts. And let's see whether the climbing bike will get dropped. It does have the advantage of having my bike to draft off, but in theory, it should drop off. Now they're both getting exactly the same draft pretty much here. Almost identical. But you can see the AERO bike is pulling away, well the group's pulling away, and the climbing bike is getting dropped. It is making its way back because of the fact that the front of the pack hits the wind and slows up the group because of the new pack dynamics. There's no rolling effect so much with the pack. So the climbing bike survived that scare. Will it be so lucky once we make it off the descent and we sit on the flats? But it did, you can see it did lag, which is what you expect. End of video, let's go have lunch. But I need to investigate this further, because in Coco there didn't seem to be any difference. So was it just a bit of momentum? Okay, here we go again. The AERO bike is just behind the climbing bike. I'm almost stuck on myself. Okay, so I'm just able to move past. Now they've both got the same draft here. 130 versus 135. The AERO bike's moved ahead just a touch. Only one bike length. I don't know what I did there. I was messing up. Oh, I was moving the draft gauge. That's what I was doing. So this is what I expect. Why are we watching this video? Well, we'll have to wait because there is some... It isn't as clear cut. Okay, so that I'm having to put a bit of effort in now for the aero bike, and the climb bike's, it's gone. If you're racing in a race and you're in this position, you know you have to put a big effort in. But the thing is, I'm riding looking at the aero bike only. So I'm not making a big effort because this video is about the effort required to stay in the group, not the effort required to get yourself back in the group. So, bang. So 1-0 to the aero bike. What I'll do now is I'll rejoin the Tour de Zwift late start, piss off a lot of you viewers who love to race a Tour de Zwift group rides. And I'll ride focusing on the climbing bike and forgetting about the aero bike, trying to ride efficiently with the climbing bike. And already I can say, yeah, sure, the aero bike's going to stay in easily. It's not going to, why, it's going to be riding the whole rest of the ride like this. It's not going to get dropped. There's a little bit of a climb at the end, but it's nothing steep. I have to restart this now because there is an issue. Maybe not. Okay, so for whatever reason, it dropped my climbing bike in way, like did not give me any pedal now. So it just, anyway, so now I'm at the front with the aero bike pulling the group, and at the back I'm just sitting in the bunch. What I need to do now is just stay in the group. So the aero bike has hit the front, is moving back in the group, but look at the draft. There's 140, 170, 80, 100, 190 almost draft. He's sitting well in the group. There is no way that that aero bike's getting dropped. And I'm concentrating on the climbing bike at the back to try not to push through and do any watt wasting. There is being late join. There is the issue that some riders join and they just get dropped, like the last two, that rider then. So I've got to make sure I don't just sit at the last rider because I'm just going, I don't want to get dropped. Okay, so now what's happened here? The aero bike. Where are you going, aero bike? Now, I don't think I've even realised because I'm just looking at the climbing bike. I'm not going, okay, the aero bike's dropped. I need to bring him back in. I'm just concentrating on the climbing bike. Don't want to push too hard. Just want to stay at the back of the group. It's fine. Now the draft is the same, 72, 71, almost identical. Now there's a little bit less draft with the aero bike now. Tiny bit, but it's an aero bike. That shouldn't matter. But there's a gap. There's a gap forming to that aero bike. Now there's 20 watts difference in draft now. Yeah, so the aero bike is getting dropped. 140 watts versus 88. We've all raced on Zwift. We know this is that's death. So the 1-0. What? How? So now we've got to go back to the aero bike and ride as the aero bike to see if it drops the climbing bike. But yeah, this is I did not expect. Was it the gravel? I've got to go back and look. People can go back and look to see what exactly happened to that aero bike. So now we'll go to, again, the same race. Exit, re-enter, so that we can both be part of a group. I've still got 10 minutes This time I'm pedaling straight away because I don't want the bikes to be different. But I got pedal assist this time. I don't know what happened last time. It didn't give me pedal assist. Okay, so we're both at the front of the group. Now I'm concentrating on riding as the aero bike. I'm a little bit too far back with the aero bike now, actually. I have to put a little bit of an effort in there just to hold the group. People push through on the arcade for some reason. Alright, so we're nice and firmly entrenched in the group, both of the riders, so you can see the aero bike's just ahead of the climbing bike. You can actually see both the bikes, so for those people who thought that I'd put the wrong bike setups, nope, I haven't. And so the Bridgestone there. Now this is again as you'd expect. Well, maybe not right now. See the draft. There was like 20 watts difference in draft, but the aero bike was in the better position for draft. So the more I look at this after the event, the more I think that Source is showing the watt wasting window in effect. Okay, so the aero bike is behind the climbing bike now. They're both, well, see the draft? Look at that. I have to go back to see it again myself, but it looked like the draft dropped significantly for... There's a big difference in the draft showing. I know they're in a slightly different groups of the pack, but before... There we go, 122 versus 139, 100, there we go, back to normal. This is what you'd expect. Now there is slight delays with Source. I think it's about a second between what happens on Zwift and what you see on Source. So if you're looking and going, well, that doesn't make sense sometimes, because you'll see the draft changing, but the riders... Anyway, you know what I mean. Doesn't quite correlate exactly, but it's about 1 second, maybe 2 seconds delay. About 1.5, I don't know. Say 1.5. Okay, so now, riding as the aero rider, I'm just catching up now. I'm going to sit next to the lightweight bike. There was about 10 watts difference in draft there, even though the aero bike was further behind. Someone's going for the sprint. Actually, there's no sprint there. What are they doing? Maybe they're doing intervals. But it's not a race, it's a group ride. Okay, again, the draft for the aero bike was a lot higher then. And the climbing bike got stuck on those riders. Also, has anyone else noticed that the maps don't work properly when you're not in Watopia? Like, it shows the map, the topography, but where am I on the course? They've got the start, they've got the sprint banners. Oh, there we go. It picked up just then. It showed me that when I was doing a climb, I think it showed it. So the climbing bike did stick in there for a long time, but finally, the climbing bike's been dropped. So again, 2-1 to the aero bike. So now we've got to go re-enter the event, and we've got to ride as a climbing bike and see if the climbing bike can equal the score. Again, as you can see on the map, I don't know where I am on the course. Maybe it's because I'm late joining. It's broken the map. So now what I've got to do is I've got to actually wait for the group to catch up to me, because I don't really riding. What's the point of riding 2 up TTT when I'm the same rider? Okay, here we go. A bit of a spurt. Now remember, I'm looking at the climbing bike, ignoring the aero bike. And conveniently you can see B pit just up the road, but I lost momentum. So oh no, it's all right. I thought I lost momentum, but it's just the ebb and flow of the hills. Now I'm getting dropped as the climbing bike, so I've got to put a bit more effort in. What's the draft meter? 143, 140. What? They're identical. What? There we go. Lost a little bit. Draft is the same. So there's no sticky draft showing on the aero bike at the moment. Now I'm back in the group with the climbing bike. This is pretty much standard what you'd expect the climbing bikes behind the aero bike. Again, why am I making this video? Just delete and then just go somewhere else, do something else. But it's not that simple. Now you can see I'm actually shoulder to shoulder now with the aero bike. How did the aero bike fall out of the group and come back? Right, 120 versus 104, so I think that was a sticky draft for the climbing bike. He's stuck on, what's his name? Ether. Bloody Ether. Ether? Anyway, that was a sticky draft. And you can see the climbing bike got stuck and the aero bike just pushed through. Now it's off the front, despite being behind. Okay, so now the aero bike's gone from the front of the group to the back of the group. So at this point I was like, well, it's a bit unfair because the aero bike hit the front. I'll put a little bit of effort in to bring the aero bike back in the group because I don't want to restart this ride again. And that wouldn't have been a fair indication that the aero bike was lost. So now the even Stevens again. So back to concentrating just on the climbing bike. So it was a soft evening of the scores almost, because I think the aero bike would have got dropped if I didn't intervene. But let's consider that sort of a soft 2 each. That was indicative of what my conclusion is going to be. That a lot of the time it's got nothing to do with the bike, unless you're riding the gravel bike or a mountain bike. If you've got a fairly similar bike at the top level, then it's your efficiency that's going to make the difference. It's making those errors where you hit the wind, you ruin all the advantage you have having an aero bike on the flat. Now let's have a look. The aero bike's ahead still, making his way through the group. They're both the same draft. Now the aero bike's made his way to the front again. Lost draft. 39, 37, see it's 36 kilometres an hour versus 38, 35 versus 37. So of course the aero bike's going to get birded out the back. This is again efficiency. Look at the aero bike, just got smashed by the climbing bike, all because the aero bike hit the wind. So now I put a little bit of a spurt in to get the aero bike into the group. That is an effort you have to make that I didn't have to make with the climbing bike. I know I'm doing grey, but sometimes you do red and grey. You need that grey to be as long as possible so that your next red can be much thicker, stronger. The aero bike has been pulled back again, but they're on the descent now. So this is where the aero bike should be so much better than the climbing bike. My expectation is the aero bike's just going to constantly just smash the climbing bike down this. Look at the draft, 166 versus 120. So the aero bike easily got back into the group. Probably going to go to the front of the group with the same effort I'm doing with the climbing bike to stay at the back. Almost got to the front. But now the yo-yo effect again. Lost a lot of draft, comes back. Now there's 230 watts versus 200. I should have looked back at that to see, because there was seen to be a lot less draft for the aero bike at the front. Okay, so 380 versus 330, 400. So it's like almost 100 watts difference back then. But then my rider hit the wind. So the whole pack must have spread out a little bit, which allowed the aero bike just to come zooming back in with all that draft. That it didn't, because I lost 100, what was it, 400 and something watts draft. So the aero bike's lost draft versus 400 watts. Obviously if you're in the race, you'd be concentrating on the aero bike and you'd pedal a little bit harder. You wouldn't just ignore the fact that you're just drifting back slowly. But that's not the point of this video, is it? The point is to see what the difference in effort is. So now, aero bike's got 70 watts less draft, but I was surprised that I got back in there because of the theory that, oh no, it's 340, 360. There was a little bit of a time there where the draft was a lot lower, despite the fact I was in the pack, compared to the draft for the aero bike, which is a lot further back. Oh, 0 watts again. 0 watts for the aero bike just then. Just as we hit a little climb. That was like the worst case scenario if you're riding in a race, to hit the front. And this is actually what if the bikes were completely even, this is exactly what I expect to happen. If you hit the front just as you're about to hit a little rise and you lose the momentum over that rise, then this is the outcome. You get dropped. This is where really strong riders spend a lot of extra energy, because they will hit the front just before a rise, lose momentum because they've lost 200 watts, 300 watts draft, have to put more effort in to get over that rise to get momentum, because the riders at the back are ploughing through. So that's 2-all. Is it a fair thing? Well, no, the aero bike was easily staying in, but it was extremely inefficient. And what just happened there is what you see so many riders on Zwift do, is just yo-yo back and forth. And if you hit the front at just the wrong time, yeah, okay, you might not get dropped if the race is going easy, but that was a really difficult, like a ZRL race where it was a segment. And you're all putting out the same watts per kilo, roughly the same power, because you're all, you're racing against similar people. You lose 50 meters, like that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm still not finished with this test. Yes, I'd choose the aero bike on the flat, but the difference wasn't that great, and the efficiency was actually the greatest difference. And the aero bike did get dropped before. Well, I'm not quite sure why, but did. So there's not a huge difference. Remember that if you look at the Zwift Insider page, the difference over like a 20-minute course is very minuscule. Yes, and if you're at a TT, that makes a big difference. But if you're in a pack, your positioning is by far the biggest factor, which is why you'll see riders who absolutely smash it outdoors, get on Zwift and blow themselves up. That's self-propagating, is that the correct term? Where because you're doing the extra watts, because you're pushing against that sticky draft, you then sometimes break that sticky draft, you hit the front. So then you're like, I'm drifting back, I've got to keep the power down, and then you get the sticky draft again, then you hit the front, and then you drift back again. Versus the rider like me who sits at the back, trying to keep that distance at the back, a couple of meters, not worried if it goes out to 5 meters because I can put a little bit more of an effort in. And when you see a little descent coming, you know, okay, I've just got to push over the top, get the momentum, and then as you hit the bottom of the descent, you can really ease up because the draft is going to be so strong once your speed gets up over 50 kilometers an hour that the riders at the front of the group are going to be hitting the wind, and it's like a parachute. So if you're at the back getting 400 watts draft, you don't need to do any pedaling if the guys at the front are getting 0 watts draft. They're not trying to break away, they're just pedaling away, doing their zone 2. Okay, here we go. So we're on the climb in a group. Now, I'm going to concentrate on riding as the climbing bike to see. It's not a steep climb. No, it's not the Alpe. This is a pretty typical climb in a race where you're trying to decide, should I go with the aero bike or should I go with the less aero bike that's also lightweight to get over the climb, still in the group, rather than penalise myself with a heavy aero bike up a climb like this where there is 5-6% gradient. So as you'd expect, the aero bike is behind the climbing bike now. Again, why am I making this video? Well, let's just wait a second. Now we've got a slight descent, which is again quite common in Zwift. A lot of like Titans and things, you've got a little descent into a rise, descent into a rise. So now the aero bikers just zoomed past. If you're watching a race, you'd think, oh, that aero bike's made a move to the front, put extra power down. But didn't do anything. The aero bike did exactly the same power. It just moved to the front, just glided on through. Might not have been the fact there's an aero bike, it's more the positioning, I think. The sticky draft of the climbing bike. The climbing bike pulled ahead. It was on the inside corner though. As I said in that steering video, it makes a difference. Now the aero bike's on the inside corner. It's pulled ahead before we got to that corner because it got slightly better draft. Now this is going to be the interesting bit. I've got, well, watch out for the pigs, 15 watts, 12, 9. So the draft has dropped off significantly now. It's almost I'll be drafting myself. Let's see. Now what happens here now, like I have to ease off because I don't want to be, like what's the point of me riding away from the group with my own rider on my wheel? But the aero bike, check it out. At the top of the climb, after all of that, the aero bike is ahead. Has lost a little bit of momentum because there's no draft. But you dragging around a climbing bike for that segment makes no sense when you would climb. Okay, now this is not perfect, this is bro science. But look, shoulder to shoulder, if anything the aero bike's slightly ahead. So there we go, almost one bike length difference. Yes, there's draft and everything involved, but this is bike racing. It's not a TT race. This is one of the reasons why I always take the aero bike regardless of the course, because apart from very specific routes, there's very, very few extended 9% climbs. And I mean extended, not just a 30-second, 40-second effort. Something like the Zwift that probably starts leaning towards having a climbing, an aero, more of a climbing bike. That's an aero bike. Like you still would not take the Athos with the Rovals. Well, I wouldn't take it anyway because you're paying such a penalty on the flats and the rollers. New York's all about rollers, and as you can see, if you've got an aero bike, those rollers are so much better. Now this is the descent, so you'd expect this is where the aero bike pays you back big time. You've just done a maximum effort to get over that climb, whether you've broken away or more like me, got dropped, and trying to hang on to whatever is left over of the drop-ease, trying to make sure I can find a group. So if you've got the aero bike, as you can see, it's only just got past. The aero bike pulls ahead, can actually get to the front of the group and help pull the front of the group to the next riders. So now the aero bike's at the front, providing a draft for the group, helping the group go faster. The climbing bike has not hit the front yet. I can still pedal really easy to recover. So it's not a massive advantage having the aero bike here. But there is still an advantage. And now it's at the back of the group, you think, okay, it's going to get dropped. There's 460, I saw 500 for a second for the climbing bike versus 300. 511 versus 250. 487 versus 180. 330, but I hit the front. So this is what I'm talking about. If you're going down a descent, don't stress too much, because I lost momentum there. Lost all that 500 watts draft. Same with every other rider that went through that pack. They all cycled around. They all cycled to the front. Kind of confusing when talking about cycling, but they cycled to the front, lost that draft. Now the aero bike is getting dropped now. But it didn't get dropped as such. It hit the front, lost the momentum, and then was dangling at the back with half the amount of draft. So let's go to the next climb and see if that was a fluke. There is two separate packs. I'm not going to worry about the pack the first pack that's driving away. I'm not fit enough to be smashing myself for a YouTube video. I don't get enough likes and subscribes. Okay, so I'm letting the pack go. I'm riding as the climbing bike, but the aero bike's ahead. Okay, it was a flat section and it's very little red. But here we go to the red, the climbing bike starting behind the aero bike as you'd expect. The draft is very similar, 20s. '30s. So the draft is actually less for the aero bike because there's a bit of a gap. Which is kind of good because the aero bike is riding away from the climbing bike. So I want to try and even it up again for the next steep section. Not hugely steep, but at least get as much data as possible for the bro science. Okay, so that back together again, basically dragging along the aero bike from the draft. There's 30 versus 40, 50, 40 versus 60. So I'm basically dragging my lightweight climbing bike up this hill with the aero bike. You can see on the graph, it's not like there's dropouts. There's slight differences in that red. But that was when I was just trying to get back on. Doesn't really matter. Everything else, pretty much. There's no dropouts, most importantly. There's no flat tops indicating that they're having signal losses. And yet, the climbing bike is being dragged up the hill by the aero bike. Now it's brought alongside. They've both got no draft. Alright, so now you'd expect, okay, this is a situation that's quite steep back there. Again, this is what most climbs are like in Zwift. If you're going to go up a 9%, 10% climb, of course, just use a climbing bike. But for these courses where you're umming and ahhing, like, am I going to get dropped on these sections? I might err on the climbing bike side just to make sure. Here is a great example of why you probably wouldn't. The aero bike is ahead of the climbing bike. It's got no draft. The climbing bike's got 50 watts of draft. So as you'd expect, they're coming together again. And we've got the last final pinch now. I've seen enough. So, what's the takeaway of this video? It just reinforces the fact that yes, I always want to have the most aerodynamic bike on Zwift at the moment. Because even when I get to the climbs, that's not going to penalise me unless it's a very steep, long, sustained climb. If it's a rolling climb, I'm definitely going aero bike because those little down descents, you get a little bit of momentum and then you get back into the group. You make sure you don't push through, and I rely on the fact that everyone else in the group is going to be riding like an idiot. Thanks for watching, and I'll have to think of something new. Maybe write in the comments something you want me to test or even just talk about on a video. I'll see if I can get on Zwifters podcast this Saturday, depending on my baby's sort of schedule. He's doing quite well. Also, do people actually want to, or would people like me to put a video up a little about Ethan's story at some stage? I kind of feel uncomfortable putting stuff up, not about the fact that Ethan's online. It's more the fact that I'm like, it feels like I'm using his story for my channel. It'd be nice to be able to share a little bit about my son and Whitney and our journey the last year or the previous year for the last sort of, June all the way through the rest of to now. But only if people are actually interested, because if I put it up and people don't really care, I might as well put it on a different channel. because I'm uploading a bit more, I'm getting a lot more views. It's not just the people that I speak to in the Discord chats who will see pictures, and I'll post updates about how Ethan's going and things and have sort of personal conversations. So for people who do follow me just on YouTube and are not quite sure what's happened with the birth of Ethan, my son, maybe if you'd like, just put a comment on and just let me know, and I'll put something together. And I've got so much footage because of the fact that I had so much time literally just waiting in the hospital that I could just film everything. And potentially when Ethan's 21, 20, 30, 40 or whatever, he'll have an archive of his parents' experience waiting for his arrival and then his arrival. Anyway, so I better go. I've been jabbering on a bit too much. I've actually got to watch all my teammates, how they're going in the TTT. It's the first time in a long time that Burrito Titans have 8 riders in the TTT, but we'll see if there's actually 8 after the flag drops out of the bend. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.